Okay, now this is a little bit of a heavier, deeper topic, but I think it's a really important topic to touch on, and it's a more in-depth explanation of what it is that we're actually doing in the rehab process and why it can be so beneficial for you, the patient. Now, hang with me because a lot of this is going to get into some of the sciences, but you're going to understand why you see a lot of changes when you implement the right things and why certain things aren't necessarily going to create the outcome that you want. So when we kind of dive deep into the sciences of just like the human body, we have what are considered these different systems within the body, okay? And maybe you can't necessarily name all of them, but you have an awareness of what these things are, right? We have skeletal system, muscular, cardiovascular, pulmonary, nervous system, integumentary, and it's just like a division of different areas like our skin, our heart, our lungs, right? Each one of these systems control different functions throughout the body. Now, the really interesting thing is that each one of these systems interact with one another. So what that means is we can make a change in any one of these systems and it can potentially create a change in another. So for example, if someone were to come up behind you and scare you, right? You're immediately, potentially going to get startled, right? You're going to get scared. Your nervous system is going to spike. You're going to get into what we call that fight or flight mode, and then you're going to get a trickle-down effect. You're going to create an increase in blood pressure. Your heart rate's going to go up. You might feel an increase in muscle tension, right? You might tense up almost as if you're ready to get into a fight, right? There's a lot of different things that are going to occur even though the source of what happened was just someone coming up and scaring you. So now all of a sudden you get a change in the nervous system, and that changes the cardiovascular system because all of a sudden you start breathing heavier, right? That changes pulmonary system, right? And then all of a sudden we start to see changes in multiple different areas, right? So nothing ever actually works completely in isolation. However, I'm a physical therapist, right? I don't perform surgery, right? I definitely don't perform open heart surgery. I don't have a direct connection to many of these systems, even though I can influence how those systems work. My direct connection to your kind of like multi-system approach would be through the muscular or skeletal system, which we typically just kind of group together and call the musculoskeletal system, right? So that is the reason why we in the rehab world come through exercise, right? Yes, we're trying to impact specifically where the injuries occurred and specifically if there's any type of tissue remodeling that needs to be done or any type of mobility restrictions, but we don't actually know which system that we are truly impacting that is leading to your change in pain, right? Pain is super complex. You typically have people in my industry on one end of the spectrum or the other when they're talking about the importance of biomechanics or pain science. And I don't even think both sides of the argument understand that they're both talking about the same thing just through different lenses, right? If we understand that we're just jumping in at different points in the body to try and impact other systems, then we could realize that it's really not an argument at all. It's just a matter of personal preference or where you feel most comfortable, or maybe the population that you work with, right? So there's a lot of complexity in the things that we do, and I think diving deeper into just all the influences that, or all the variables that we could potentially account for that could explain pain could even further muddy this and explain why it's so hard sometimes to really find the right input for the right person. So now, by no means is this list completely exhausted. I just wrote down a handful of things, and this actually I drew motivation from a conversation with a mentee of mine actually a couple weeks ago, but we worked together and I tested him to give me as many variables as possible that could otherwise influence one of his patients' pain. Right, like so we came up with a list, and we have swelling, range of motion, maybe biomechanics, some psychological factors, nutrition, sleep, stress management, work capacity, or the volume of activity someone's prepared to do. Some neurological factors, the intensity of the activity, maybe it's just exercise selection if they're having pain in the gym, their work environment, whether it's stress or whether it's something physical, their general motivation, right? So that has a psychological component to it also. And then any past experience, past injury, and I'm sure you can probably come up with some other variables that we could potentially influence that's going to play a role in somebody's pain. So now, all of a sudden, we look at both lists here, and we realize that we can intervene on, say, nutrition and make an impact on any number of these systems. We can intervene with biomechanics, which is going to impact maybe where stress is being put on their body. Then that's going to impact, say, the skeletal system, and that's interaction elsewhere is going to potentially create this systemic response. So while we can't necessarily account for every possible variable, especially for the people that are really having a difficult time creating the change that we want, we need to appreciate more than just the superficial, more than just the area of the pain, to understand all these different things that could otherwise influence why someone's experiencing pain. It doesn't always necessarily mean it's starting from a musculoskeletal issue. However, like I said, as a physical therapist, that is my only means of interacting with that individual, right? Obviously, we have conversations, right? So we do have input into the psychological side of things, but by no means am I a psychiatrist, right? I'm not a surgeon, right? Like, there's going to always be specialists that can have that be the direct connection that they have with the patient. But that's the reason why exercise alone can create such a vast cascade of improvements. So hopefully, just understanding a little bit deeper some of the complexity as to how these things interact with each other will explain why sometimes certain things work for some people, even if it seems a little bit outside of the box, right? Nothing is ever going to be a one-size-fits-all approach. We just want to be able to understand all of these variables, understand why maybe attacking breathing is able to get someone's heart rate to drop 30 beats per minute in a matter of seconds, or maybe it's able to create change in range of motion, or maybe it's able to decrease some of their stress or improve their sleep quality. Maybe someone's nutrition improves their digestion, but also improves their ability to do work, right? Like, it doesn't really matter how we combine all these different variables, as long as we understand that we need to, in some respects, stay within our lane as to the areas that we are experts in, but also understand how it's going to influence other things, and then decide if there's something that is telling us it might require a more direct approach through a different system that we are not able to intervene on. That's when we then refer to one of those experts. So I hope this was useful information for you. I know it's super complex. I love talking about these things. So if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments or drop me a direct message, and I'd be happy to talk about it with you further.